Welcome back to this module on financial discipline to achieve financial freedom by Open Brain Society. This is Karthik, and let's come back to this particular module. So, basically, in this module, we'll be discussing about something called risk reward. Okay, so just recalling what we have learned in the last module when we were discussing about growing money and compounding. So we were basically saying there were two machines, right? This the one machine was giving 20% and one machine was giving 10%. Correct. So now suppose there are two machines which are giving that way, and suddenly assume that the machine kept a catch. That the machine which is giving 20% has a note behind it saying that yes, I mean you will be getting at the end of 10 years, let us say, okay, there can be many kinds of risks. We will not go into all the details of different kinds of risks, but you'll get a sense of what are the different kind of risks that might be there. Okay, so okay, before going first of all deep diving into this, first let's look into some example which you can actually understand or which you can easily relate to. So now, let's say you're writing some examinations, right? So let's say you completed the 10th standard or whatever, and then you either wanted to take up engineering or medicine or whatever it may be. Okay. And there are some entrance examinations which you need to write. Now there are different. So I think most of people should know about IIT, JEE, and all this entrance examinations. So there's a different entrance examination for state level run colleges, and for some premium universities there's a different examination. Correct. And so you have to now decide as to what is the thing that you want to prepare for. Correct. Now, what is the main decision there? So what you want to risk for is the main decision. So how does that work? So now, let us say some person decided that he wants to take IIT coaching, or if in case of a medicine, maybe NEET or whatever. Okay, I'm assuming the engineering case. So in that, you'll let's assume that IIT the top tier, where if you get into there, your life will be good and all that. Okay, and so your reward there is huge if you get that. So that you can compare it to kind of this 20% return where you get huge return. Cool. But every return always has some risk associated with it. Okay? The risk can vary significantly. And now you understood the reward, right? The reward is getting into IIT. So if everything goes well, that is what you get. That is the reward. But what is the risk? Before understanding that, let's take the other person, and this person actually taking the training for the local examination for the local seats. Of course the reward he can get at max is only that one. So there the reward he will be getting is only a little. Okay, now these two are there. Now the risk is that, okay, this may not be true in all cases, just assume that this is the risk. So the risk is that this person who is taking this IIT coaching, if you decide to do that, if you fail, or if you can't, or if you are not able to prepare whatever, then what happens is that you might not even be able to get into this college. It's a much difficult exam, so there's a high probability of failing there. And the another risk is that if you don't get into there, you cannot get in even into the lower colleges. Just assume that is the case. So that's the risk of it. But if you get it, of course. So obviously the risk is there because there the number of students who get selected in that examination as a percentage of total students is much lesser, right? So obviously you being in the other percentage. So let's say there are 100 students. Okay, so let's dive into this example a bit more. Okay, so let's say, okay, there are 100 students. So let's get back to the same page. This one. Okay, there are 100 students, and out of which only in the case of IIT, let's say only 2%, 2 students get selected. Whereas MSET, let's say there are just assume the same number, and there are 10 students who get selected. So, which means here your chance of making it or earning that reward is only 2 by 100. Whereas here the chance of you earning the reward is 10 by 100, which is much higher than this. But of course, the reward is higher here. The reward you get is naturally higher. But here, the risk you need to take is that there's a lesser probability of you gaining that reward. So this is the risk. Whereas here, the risk you take is much lesser. So the more the risk you take, obviously, the more reward you'll automatically get. Correct. When you take very less risk, you get the maximum reward that you can get might also be very less. But the main idea behind finding, so now what you need to do, therefore, let's just compare this in this case of machine. So there, however it is in this life, it's the same way even in this money case. If you put in this machine, there may be a risk of losing this money, and this in this machine too, the risk of losing your money is much lesser. So, or there can be different ways of defining it. There are different types of risk, but assuming that maybe this money may go down by 20% at max. That is also a probability. Whereas here it can go down by as much as, here it might go down by as much as 50%, let us say. You might lose 50% of your money that you put in your machine as well. That is also a possibility. Whereas here at max maybe only 20%. And hence the reward that you get is only this, whereas the reward that you get here is every year you are getting 20%. So this is one type of risk. Okay, so that's the idea behind this. So therefore what I'm trying to say is that when you choose between these two missions, you also have to assess the risk. Now coming back to the first case where you just did a saving, this is like you can assume it to be zero risk, because I mean, of course, there's always some risk of somebody stealing money. That's a different case. Assuming that those are nullified and you're living in an ideal world, then what happens is, because you have zero risk, this 9,000 you are sure to get after this. If you don't do anything with that money, you're definitely going to get this 9,000. But you'll only get 9,000. That is the catch. Whereas here, you were able to get 22,500. But in the process, you might also go down in between, whereas at some stages, maybe you may be down for that 50% and all as well. Whether you can take it or not is the big question. If you can take that, then at the end of 10 years, 20 years, if everything goes well, this is the best case. Or you might also go, the worst case could be as low as 4,500. Also, this is a possibility. And in most cases, this could lie somewhere in between this two, between 4,000 and the 4,500 and 22,500. This much variation could be there in what you get at the end of 9 years. So this variation would decrease slightly when you go to the option 2. So therefore, the main choice is between what is the machine you want to choose. So what would be the best machine to choose? The one where you take as less risk as possible and you get as much, and the reward possibility is maximum. If you can find such a machine where your risk is lesser, but of course without any risk, with zero risk, if you can get the whole reward, that's That's ultimate, but that never happens. You have to take some risk. But there are certain situations where you might get a chance or you might find a machine which actually gives very good reward even with a lesser risk. So if you can find such a machine, then you are a path to financial freedom. So far you wanted to achieve financial freedom, and we just went in the ideal way. Saving better is growing, but growing is obviously more riskier than saving. That's what I am trying to make you understand here. Okay. So, but the way to achieve it is with least risk, and if you can get most reward, then you can reach this financial freedom in lesser time. So, you can get to the financial freedom in much lesser time. So, this that is the whole point here. Okay. So, the finally the idea is to achieve that mission with this thing. But how to live in? So, there the machines here are nothing but the different kind of instruments into which you put your money. Like they can be from here, you can put it in gold, you buy gold or whatever, or land, you could buy something else. So, what are these all? These all are called as assets. So, whatever these things that are giving you this financial freedom are actually assets. These things grow over time. Okay. So, in the next module, we'll be actually discussing about assets and liabilities, and why is it important to distinguish between both, and how important is it to uh, actually have more assets than compared to liabilities, and why is it important to understand what is an asset and what is a liability. Okay, that we'll be discussing in the next module. So that's it for this module. Thank you for watching.